VeeFam, welcome back. My name is Mr. Messer, but you can call me Rob, and I'm back with another episode of the VeeFam sessions with the amazing laptop Laura, aka Laura Petersen, VeeFriend, mother, author, Hangout Hawk, all of the above, and so much more. Laura, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
So excited to connect. Actually, I'm blessed to connect with you for the first time. I've seen you, at all over the TL. I know you're very active in the community, and such a pleasure to finally carve out some time and jam with one of the OGs here. So, um, as I start many conversations on this show, I like to, before we kind of talk about where we are, I like to take a step back all the way to the beginning. So if you don't mind giving us kind of like the 55-second cliff notes on who Laura Petersen is prior to ever hearing the name Gary Vee.
Yeah, so I like to say that I'm a tall teacher turned entrepreneur. But if I go even farther back in school, I was like the opposite of Gary. So everyone said, you need to get good grades, go to the best school possible, climb the corporate ladder, like that's success. And I was like, okay, let me do that. So I was a big nerd in school and I studied and I did well and I kind of figured out the system. And it wasn't until I studied abroad in Germany when I was 20. So my junior year of college, I studied abroad in Germany for an entire year. And it was the first time that I actually had extra time and space to try different things because I had been so purely academic. And in Germany, they only take a test every 2 years for their requirements. They don't get a grade in every single class. And so I actually had to go up to the professors and say, I'm from the United States. I need a letter grade. And they're like, all right, do you want to write a paper? And I was like, one paper for the whole semester? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, sold. And then they're like, can you do it in German? I'm like, well, my German isn't amazing enough to write it really well. And they're like, well, just do it in English. So I had one paper to write in English per semester, which was like absolutely nothing compared to what I was used to. So I had so much free time. So I backpacked all over Europe. I did trampoline competition. I learned salsa dancing. I did a paint class. Like I just had an absolute ball. And it was the first time that I was like, wow, there's more to life than just studying really hard and getting good grades. And so I came back from that, and my dad happened to give me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And I had just had this transformative year experience. And then he gives me that, which completely opened my eyes to money and just how things work in that world because I was just all about academics. And so from there, boom, like my life was completely different. And I just knew I wanted a different path. So I actually applied to grad school and got into some programs to do a PhD in psychology. And I just decided to completely switch gears. I moved to Arizona from California to buy a house and start trying to invest in real estate and do that whole thing. I got my real estate license and I don't know, I just did all this kind of stuff. And then I ended up becoming a teacher, and I did that for 5 years and I loved it. But right when my fifth year of teaching, or like 4.5 year of teaching after this, including student teaching, I was going to be turning 30 at the end of that year. And I was like, I want to start a business and I've never been able to figure it out. And so I just like burned all the ships and said, I'm retiring from teaching. And everyone was like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm starting a business. And so this was in 2011. And I ended up meeting a friend who also wanted to start a tutoring company. And so together we started a tutoring and test prep company in Phoenix, Arizona. And I did that for many years. And then finally my heart kind of grew out of the whole test prep world because
Mm,
I was starting to see that school isn't necessarily the right thing for everybody,
yeah.
but kind of what we were pushing was like, your kid must have the best SAT scores. That's kind of what we were selling. And I just found my heart being more pulled into helping my other entrepreneurial buddies with content creation. And so I started my own brand called Copy That Pops. So like writing that stands out, and started a podcast and started doing social media content creation for people on the back end and blogs and learning about SEO. And then eventually I wrote a book and self-published it and figured out how to hit #1 in relevant categories on Amazon. So I helped a bunch of people do that. So I don't know, this was way longer than 55 seconds, but
That's all right. I mean, you've done a lot. You've done a
yeah.
lot in a very short amount of time. And we could go down so many of those avenues. And I'm gonna try to. But what an amazing journey. Interesting that you kind of you because I'm a teacher and I've had the similar journey where I've left. And this is kind of after I found Gary, but
Mm.
left and come back like 2 or 3 times now. Um, and it's interesting that you kind of saw your world explore and then went into teaching, where it's like just and it's a very enclosed ecosystem that like
Yeah.
breeds zoo animals that don't know that any that sounds a little harsh, but like they don't know that there's this big world out there. So it's interesting you kind of did the reverse and then left again.
Well,
Um,
sorry to
so
interrupt you, but to explain it, I tried starting a bunch of businesses when I was in my 20s
got it.
and I couldn't figure it out because I'm not like a natural businessy person. Obviously, like I did so well in school, like I'm more naturally suited to that maybe. And the internet wasn't what it is now back in so I graduated college in 2003 and moved to Arizona like 2005. So like kind of in like 2004 to 2008-ish time, I was like trying different businesses and stuff, but I couldn't like starting even a website was just impossible unless you really knew the coding and like you wanted to get into that and I couldn't figure it out. So I have a bunch of like failed business embarrassing things. And that's why I ended up was like, I need to make money and I need to do something. And so I kind of just fell back into my comfort zone, which is school. And I
Hmm.
really did love being a teacher. It really was amazing. And I got so much time off to travel. So I backpacked through Southeast Asia a couple times. Like I went to Machu Picchu.
Yeah,
That was my other big thing is I love international travel. And most other jobs, they're like, yeah, 2 weeks vacation. And I'm like, sorry, that's not going to work for me. So teaching kind of was that perfect in between
got
where
it.
I
That
could
makes
still
a ton of
do what
sense.
I loved in terms of like helping people and talking about nerdy things, but I still had a lot of time to also travel around the world.
Got it. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Um, zooming in momentarily, zooming into that like burn the boats moment. I think you said you were 30.
Yeah.
That has been um that's been like a real thing, especially like I'm thinking back to like this last like bull market in Web3. A lot of people in this audience and around NFTs were having that moment like NFTs are happening, like I'm leaving my day job, I'm going all in on Web3, or I'm leaving my day job, I'm going all in on you know XYZ business, myself included, because I did that too. And it's very sexy and it's very, put up on a pedestal. But like someone that's done it, and I've done it too, it sucks. If you don't have a plan, like talk to the person that might be thinking about doing that right now. And
Yeah.
like let's talk to both sides of the coin because you've made it, like you've been to the other side, but you've also been in the trenches. So I'd love to hear from your
Yeah.
perspective, like what that moment in time was like.
Yeah. And I guess, even the way that I worded that was maybe a little bit too sexy because I did stop teaching full time. But over the last couple of years while I was teaching high school, I started to teach community college online. And
Mm,
so when I did stop teaching full time, I still was making some income from online teaching with community college. So it wasn't enough to like be a baller, but it was enough to pay my bills and like
mm,
eat some food.
yeah,
So I did have a little bit still coming in and I was like a sharing squirrel, like squirreling away money while I was earning a decent income as a teacher, not like tons, but like I always have been comfortable living below my means and saving. So when I did start the tutoring company, we did not pay ourselves for freaking ever. Um, I was still able to do that because I had a little bit of income coming kind of like part-time work that was manageable. I can do anytime, anywhere on the computer. And I had savings that I could also pull on to get through. So
You
hopefully
did the sen
that is helpful. Yeah.
you did the sensible thing.
Yeah.
Well, let's tap in, double click real quick to into Copy That Pops. You mentioned it's a business where you provide writing services. Who's your who's your target demographic? Who's utilizing your services mostly? Before we get into
Yeah.
the VeeFriends land.
Yeah, sure. So I would say most of my clients are other entrepreneurs, other business owners who want to position themselves as thought leaders in their niche. So whether that's in creating content for social media or writing blog articles that are SEO optimized to help improve their website rankings, but then also educate and teach people what they know really well, or writing and self-publishing a book that's on their niche and putting that as a part of their content marketing plan. But then also a lot of people love writing a book because it helps them to get then more speaking opportunities.
Yep.
And there's just this credibility around being a published author. Literally, you need a PDF and you upload it, and within 72 hours you're live on Amazon and you're a published author. Like, it's so easy now in terms of the gatekeepers are no longer there, but still there's that cachet around it, like, oh, you've written a book. So it's been a nice sort of psychological leverage element that a lot of people love having, in addition to it just being a great tool to help their ideal audience to learn more in a cost effective way if they're not able to hire them yet for their more high ticket services.
Got it. Fantastic. Tell me about the first time you ever heard the name Gary V.
Yeah, so I think it was in 2016, and I had already had exposure to Grant Cardone, who I
Mhm.
personally do not like. Um, I used to be like a total conference junkie before I had my son. Like, all my besties, or we would go to all these podcast conferences because we're like podcast nerds. And then we're just, anyone was going to a conference, we're like, let's all go together, like all over the place.
Got it.
And so I was like, oh, sure, I'll go to Grant Cardone. I don't know who that is, but whatever, let's go. And after like the first three speakers, I was like, get me out of here. I don't like, this is not for me. Um, I should have asked for a refund. But I saw like just little clips of Gary, like 2 seconds, and I was like, oh no, this is like another Grant Cardone. I just can't deal with it. But I had two people I really respected share the same video on Facebook of Gary. And I was like, well, if these two people shared it, he can't be a Grant Cardone type. So I was like, well, let me just watch it. So I clicked it, and it was, I don't even know what episode it was, but it was like, this is episode blah, blah, blah of the Ask Gary Vee show. And I was like, oh no. But I was like, I'm going to keep watching. And literally within like a minute, I was like, oh, this is not a Grant Cardone. Like, the stuff he was saying, and even the way he was interacting with his team off camera, I was like, this guy is not at all what you might think at first. And so I think I finished watching the whole video, and then I was like, okay, he's cool. And eventually I started listening to his podcast. I love podcasts because I can be walking the dog or doing dishes and be listening. And then I would say probably like starting in 2017, I kind of just started making his podcast a daily routine. And so I would just listen to him probably every day. And it's like free therapy and business coaching in one.
Yep, that's his niche. Did you ever do Tony Robbins?
My dad used to listen to Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and those types of tapes. And so I definitely had been exposed to him, and I like him, but I wouldn't say that I ever just got like fully pulled in like I did with Gary's stuff.
Got it. Yeah, Grant Cardone is definitely not for everyone. I don't know if you've ever seen it, and I'm not going to try to um, remember the exact dialogue, but there's a fantastic clip between Gary and Grant Cardone. Have you seen this one? Do you know what I'm
I think
talking about?
uh-huh. I don't know what you're talking about, but I did see a clip because I was like, I'm fascinated to see what Gary would think of
The,
him.
well, I'm gonna clip when I clip something from this. I'm gonna also clip that. But the TLDR is that Grant Cardone. I can't remember if who was interviewing. I think Grant Cardone was interviewing Gary, and Grant Cardone was like his whole MO is like no one works harder than me. And Gary, like he couldn't believe that Gary was like, I work harder than you. He's like, no, but seriously. And Gary's like, I just know. And Gary just like totally like put his foot down, and Grant Cardone's face uh, is just unbelievably like just bewildered. Um, so
That's amazing.
it's a fantastic, and you don't see. I mean, that's probably the only time you've ever seen those two together. Um,
Hmm.
very, as you said, you could put them in the same bucket as like business guy gets multi
Yeah,
six
like high
figures to for
energy.
a talk, but totally different personalities.
Hmm. Hmm.
So to see that clash and interaction was fantastic. So you get into Gary. At what point, if at all, do you ever hit that level of like, I don't know any other way to say it than like a Gary Maxey, like where you're listening, like you don't want to skip the daily audio experience. You got to check out the YouTubes. You're clicking on the links, buying the shoes. Do you ever hit that point, or are you just kind of a fair weather fan, watching from the sidelines, taking in what you can to help you, yourself, your business, family?
I don't think I ever bought anything from Gary until I wanted to say until VeeFriends, but I think that no, that's not true. So the first thing I bought was like little tank tops that have his like one is better than zero. Oh, and I got a baby onesie. So a baby onesie that's his signature with like a barcode or something. That was the first piece of baby clothes that I bought for my son, but it was even
Wow.
before I was pregnant with him. So I think I saw one day they were having like a sale on merch or something. And so I just went and bought like 5 or 6 things. I don't even know when that was, 2017, 2018, maybe. Um,
Interesting. I never knew those existed.
yeah. And maybe they were discontinuing or something. So they were just kind of selling because it was like this really good deal. But I don't think I ever had even read a book of Gary's. I just was like podcasts. I didn't even watch it on
Mm.
YouTube or anything. I just listened to it always. But I did love Tea with Gary Vee. So the first time that he and I ever spoke was on a Tea with Gary Vee during COVID, actually.
Mm.
So, and my son was 9 months at the time, and he was on it with me. And yeah, so I definitely rambled way too much with him, as we are likely to
Sure.
do. It's like, because I thought it was the only time I probably like ever talked to him. And so I'm like, blah, life story. And I thought he would like cut in and like go down a path, but he kind of never cut me off. And at the end, I was like, shit, I was one of those people that just kept talking, like, get to the question.
What was, do
But
you remember what was like the punchline of your question?
yes, it was actually around writing children's books
Ah,
and kind of like how he might suggest because I was once I had my son, I thought I was going to want a full-time nanny and just like keep going at the same pace that I was before. And I just fell so in love with literally catching every minute with my son that things change. And so I kind of stopped publishing podcast episodes and I just started taking more of a step back from public facing content creation. Still doing things for a couple of clients, but just kind of like I stepped back and had to. I felt like I didn't have the energy to do both, or I didn't want to spend the energy and the time to do both, and I prioritized family over that more so. So my question was around, okay, if I was going to kind of create a group that maybe paid like $10 or $20 a month, and it was like group coaching and collaborating or something like that, like what kind of ideas would you have? So it was kind of just more of a brainstorming thing, but it was around children's books because I started to think, I want to do that too. So
so cool.
yeah,
That was a great show. I've
yeah,
talked about this a few times on this podcast, but my favorite Gary content is just that Q&A. I mean, he
yeah.
does a lot for his keynotes. Like the 4Ds, the Tea with Gary V, just
Uh-huh.
real contextualized, going very narrow stuff. I love that. I'm here for
Hmm.
it.
Me too.
So May 20, you're following along, listening to the podcast, getting into new stages of life. You hear about this thing that we ultimately is called VeeFriends in May of 2021.
Mm.
Are you into crypto at all? Did you dabble in anything? or did you just kind of like many of us just kind of listen to
Yeah.
Gary, get your Ethereum, get your MetaMask, and all that?
So I was a little bit into it before, but I had never ever purchased an NFT. So VeeFriends was the first NFT I ever got. Um, I was sort of, what is it, DCAing, dollar cost averaging. I was buying like $50 a month of Bitcoin and Ethereum or something like that for like maybe a year before. So I had just a little bit, it wasn't a ton. And then my brother was really getting into degen stuff. And so he actually taught me how to set up the MetaMask. And even it was so crazy complicated because you had to put in USD into Coinbase, buy Litecoin, transfer to Binance, and set up a Binance with a VPN so that you didn't have to do the Binance.com. You did like the regular Binance, or maybe the Binance.com, not the Binance.us. And then from there, you would turn the Litecoin into Binance, and then you would send it to your MetaMask in a Binance wallet, I don't know. And then once you're there, you would connect to some random website and you would buy their like random meme coin thing and just hope it wasn't rugged.
Yep.
So I did one of those things. I think I put in like $100 and it just got completely like rugged and it's like gone forever. But having gone through all those weird, crazy steps, I was at least exposed to it. So then once I learned about VeeFriends and I was like, oh, okay, I can manage that. I wasn't scared because I had done that little test run
That was your
through
work in the
my
dirt. Yep.
brother's silly stuff. Yeah.
So was it something after that experience? Was it something that you were totally into, like you put aside your
No.
ETH, or did you have to get schmoozed a little
Wait, what do you mean
with
for
with getting
VeeFriend?
VeeFriends, with
Oh,
minting VeeFriends?
so uh, it was funny because Gary talks a lot about how he was saying get ETH, buy ETH low.
Yep.
I didn't hear any of those because I think I kind of fell off listening to Gary, and I can tell why. Um, for a while, he was having team members interrupt the podcast to give like summaries and like, hey guys, listen to what Gary says next about XYZ. And I hated that because I just wanted to hear Gary. I didn't want to be interrupted. I didn't want to be given a summary or anything like that. So I actually kind of
Interesting.
stopped listening to Gary for a couple months.
I forgot
And I
about
also
that era.
love,
I remember that.
do you remember that?
Yeah.
And so I still subscribe, but I kind of just wouldn't pick it. I kind of just binge Tim Ferriss as I love him too. And he always has lots of stuff. So I kind of just back binged on things I had missed from Tim Ferriss instead of listening to Gary. And I kind of started picking up on Gary again, maybe February, March of that year. And that's when he was really talking about like, hey guys, VeeFriends is coming and this is a chance for you to invest in me. And I was like, all right, nobody works harder than Gary. I certainly don't. So I was like, if this is an opportunity to have just even a little piece in something that he's going to put energy and passion and connections and all of his stuff into, sign me up. So like I was all in once I heard that, like from him over a couple of podcasts where he really broke down what was possible with the blockchain and the technology and what his plans were and stuff. So yeah.
Fantastic. So I mean, I see you're wearing the Hawk shirt.
Yes.
If you talk to anyone, I mean, I talk to enough people where I have a sense you were one of the most, when people think of the Hawks, you're one of the names that pops up first and
Yay.
foremost out of the Hawks. Was that one that you minted early on, or did you get it later on?
Yeah, I definitely minted that right away. I remember I even posted in Discord and Gary responded. I was like, "Hey Gary, hawk or goat?" Because, they weren't cheap.
Yeah,
And I kind of thought like, "Man, I'm going to feel so much FOMO either way." And he responded something like, "Well, do you care more about people and community or do you care more about gifts?" And ultimately I'm more about community because,
sure.
over the time I've spent a lot of money on being in certain groups to expose myself to people that I want to be like, or at least I think are like minded, whether or not they're there yet, but they're similarly focused and driven. So I, even though it was expensive, because I think the hawk at the floor was 3 ETH, and then the cost of ETH, if you didn't have any, was 4,000 around there. So it was like 12 grand. I mean, that's not cheap. But I thought, wow, like one, by the end of it, maybe Gary will know my name when. And at the minimum, even if he doesn't, even if I never get a question asked because there's just too many other people asking questions and time runs out, at least I'm going to be building relationships with other people who also care to be a part of this. So I was like,
Sure.
I can't lose, and I'm really glad that I did.
So cool. We'll dive in. Actually, let's just dive in right now. Let's talk about the
Sure.
Hawk. I'm uh so bullish on this community, but like the longer it goes on, uh these man-made niches come, like hawks, like goats, and then like just by happenstance others form, the card community, so on and so
Mhm.
forth. But the Hawks is a special group, and I've talked to Daniel about it. I've talked to a couple other people, but tell the audience who may not know. A lot of people are new, coming in from Fanatics Live, coming in from a lot of new, developments, collaborations. Tell us what's the TLDR on the Hawks and
Yeah.
that access token.
So there were 125 tokens created for Hawks, and as a access benefit, you would get 5 group calls with Gary for 3 years, so a total of 15 calls, and they're done now. Um, the last one was just a week ago or so, and Gary, I think he held back a few, and then I know a few Hawks got duplicates. Plus, because also this crypto world, some people still want to be very anonymous and either don't want to say their real name or don't want to show their face on calls. Shockingly, only like 80 people, unique people, are on the calls, and only like 20 are raising their hand each time. So I actually got a
Wow.
lot more talk time with Gary than I ever imagined that I would. So he knows my name.
So, and if you think about it, and a lot of people, you could rattle off the name of an access token, like a one-off, a one of one, and
Right.
people don't even know it's an actual token.
Yeah.
So a lot of the access tokens were once a year. Your
Mm-hmm.
tennis, your bowling boa, your lunch ladybug,
Mm-hmm.
well, that were one time a year, but we're talking about 15 interactions,
Mm-hmm.
which is really, I think it's, you, you know I, I I don't want to throw the word bargain around,
Yeah.
um, but like it's a good deal considering 15 versus 3 over the course of 3 years. Plus you're in this little built-in network of other people that have, if you're investing that kind of money, you're playing at a certain level. So I'm sure you made great relationships. I know the camaraderie is very strong in the Hawks. But so you had 15 calls, and from what I understand, I know VeeFriends had kind of a vision of how it was going to go. Was it all business? Did it start out VeeFriends oriented and turn into business? Was it always business? Just give us a sense
Mm.
of like the themes of the calls, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's always been a mix, and it kind of goes a little bit in cycles. When the market went really down really fast, there were a lot more questions of like, what are you going to do to make this go up, Gary? And even now, once it ended, there were a couple questions at the end, like, now what, Gary? Like, are we never going to see you again? Or are we going to keep these going? Like, you got a surprise for us? Because he's also alluded to some little surprises and stuff. And he's like, well, I don't want to get any speculation going. I'm not doing any big promises, but we'll see. I might have a surprise for you. So it kind of goes in cycles, but we definitely have had the majority, I would say 80% have been similar to Tea with Gary Vee or 4Ds types of things where it's like, here's the issue I'm having with business. And even with parenting and life, like I asked a parenting question once because that was just most on my mind as I listened to his podcast literally every day. I almost think that I could probably predict what he's going to answer for anyone's question at this point. So sometimes I'm like, I don't really have a business question. I know what I should be doing more of, but I would love to get your perspective on this thing with being, a parent to a young kid. So that was cool too, that he's open to any kind of question.
And I don't. I don't need to double click into your question, but was you just said that you can predict his answer for most questions, business predominantly. Uh,
Mhm.
did you see the answer to his parenting question coming?
Yes and no. He definitely said it in a way that I wasn't fully expecting, but once he said it, I was like, of course, like that makes so much sense. And my question was, so my son is 4 and he's in soccer, and sometimes he's like very focused on like, I want to get the trophy. There is no actual trophy, but he just says that, I don't know, from TV shows or something. And so I was saying to Gary, like, how do you balance as a parent not wanting to be like 8th place trophies, everyone's a winner, even if you don't try, versus being so focused on being the best that you're not enjoying the process. So it's kind of like, how do you
Mm,
kind of balance that?
Great question.
And his answer was essentially, it's independent on each kid. So if you see your kid going too far in one area, then you can try to provide that context of balance to get them to see the other side. So it's kind of like there's no one right answer. It depends on the kid,
That
which makes
makes
so much sense, you know?
makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Uh, if you can remember, or if you were there, where did the Hangout Hawks caw originate from?
Um, I'm not sure. I'm not actually sure. And I don't want to take credit, but I can tell you that on the second call, I wore a bird costume and I went like this when Gary came on. And he was like, everyone, look at Laura. So I don't know if that's when the call started. So I don't want to take credit, but I did want to show my enthusiasm for the group.
That's
And
amazing.
I'm not
Do
afraid
you
to
still have the
wear.
costume?
No.
Oh, I was gonna gently request that it makes an appearance in LA
Yeah.
this summer.
It'd probably
Um,
be way too hot.
yes.
But
On November 15th, 2023, you tweeted 20 of the VeeFriends Hangout Hawks got to flock to VaynerMedia and take our group call with Gary V. IRL. So surreal to see this place you've seen on camera loads, and tons of fun to feel the energy and vibes in person. Love the Hawks. Caw. Happy birthday, Gary V. I someone told me a little birdie, or I should say a little hawk, told me that you were very instrumental in getting this. Everything is virtual, but you were very instrumental in getting this um, IRL Hangout Hawk call done at Vader Media. I would love to hear the backstory of that, because I remember seeing the content. It was Gary's birthday. There was a lot of great energy. He was having his thing at Chuck E. Cheese that night or around that time. Talk to me about that day or two.
yeah. Yeah, so I'd probably have to back it up to the first pickleball game that was in California. It was held in Newport Beach, and I've got a V2 with a clown on it. And so I got to go and I got to meet Andy K in person and Daniel D in person, which was amazing, and meet other V friends. So that was so much fun. And Daniel and I had a lovely chat, and it was like kind of the first time we'd ever talked in person because you just see someone on the screen for a minute. And he had a young son, and I had a young son, so we kind of connected on that. And I think somehow I got his self via that. And so flash forward to when the Chuck E. Cheese birthday party thing was happening. If you had an access token, you were eligible to claim a spot. And so I jumped on that really fast, and it was family friendly. So my husband and my son we all got tickets. We're like, we're flying out there for this. This is going to be amazing. And our hot call was going to be the day before this event in Brooklyn. So I was like, wait a second, this makes so much sense. So I think I just texted Daniel and I was like, hey, no pressure, no worries, but I just noticed this amazing coincidence. Is there any way that we could actually do the call from VaynerMedia? Or is there like, you could do it from a coffee shop down below, and if Gary wants to stop by or not, like, cool. And I did not say like Gary must be there, like, or we're gonna
Yeah.
be pissed. It was just like, hey, an idea. And he was like, let me get back to you. And so he and Jacqueline on the team, they communicated with me and were just like, yep, we can do up to 20 spots. And so I reached out to the Hawks and I was like, okay, guys, who's going to be there? And we got exactly 20. and coordinated it. And I told everybody, Gary is not for sure going to be there. I don't even know if he's in the office. Like, don't have that expectation, but we're going to actually get to see VaynerMania. This is going to be amazing. And so we didn't even know Gary was going to show up at all. And so we met down at the bottom of the building and they went through security, the security checks and got us in. And then we went up in the elevators and it was so surreal to walk out there and see all the little cubicles and the offices with the glass. And I'm afraid of heights. So I'm like, like standing away from the window. It's so high up. It's crazy. And so they had a conference room for us. So we all sat down and it still was like, I don't know if Gary's going to come or not. And then sure enough, he came in and it was awesome. So that was just a super bonus. I can't take credit other than just saying, hey, Daniel, would it be possible? And
Yeah.
then the team was
Well,
just
hey,
like, yeah, let's
you
do
don't
it.
know unless you ask.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just remember, you see some pieces of content really stick with you. I just remember seeing all of you guys like with the skyline in the back in the conference room. The gifts are being, it's his birthday.
Hmm.
Gifts are being distributed. It was just so cool to see, and I was super happy for you guys. Uh,
That was really
amazing,
cool.
amazing moment. So he did the whole Hawk thing there, or was it just a drop in?
Yeah, he did the whole call from there. So yeah, so he came
Amazing.
in, opened up his laptop, took questions from the screen, and like there was like a big, monitor so we could see some of the Hawks who were calling in remote. And so he did calls or he did questions from the screen and then from in person and kind of jumped around and did both. And then we did a big group picture and that was it.
So cool.
Mhm.
Um, there's got to be. I mean, I can't. I just know this community too well to. I can't think that the Hawks are officially done. The calls are expired, but I'm sure that you guys have developed relationships. Friendships, business relationships, what have you. It just tell me that's accurate.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so Discord is amazing, but we also have a WhatsApp thread of hawks, and it is constantly busy 24 hours a day because we've got hawks in Australia and in Asia and in Europe, all around the world. And so people will kind of wake up and catch up on like 40 messages that they missed. And then you wake up and there's a bunch of messages. And it's not just about business, it's also family and mental health. And like, I'm having a rough day. And people are like, come on, let's jump on a call, let's talk it out. And we do weekly calls where we do like just a collaboration call. So we'll come on and we'll say, okay, what do you want to work on? We'll set the tomato timer. We'll all work individually, kind of just a co-working session via Zoom or via Google Meets. And then at the end, we're like, okay, what did you accomplish? Okay, cool. You posted something on Instagram. Send me the link. And then we all go like and comment it and just support each other. So
I
I
love
don't see
that.
that ever ending.
What is it? I've never heard of the term tomato timer. Is
Oh,
that
like a Pomodoro timer. I don't know where it came from, but you can actually type in, I think it's tomatotimer.com, and it's this red screen with this little red tomato. I think it comes from like, how kitchen timers often are in the shape of a egg or a
yeah,
tomato
yeah,
or
yeah.
something. And so,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, so
This is why I do the podcast to learn about things like this.
yeah. So I think it's a productivity hack where it's instead of just saying, I've got a bunch to work on, I'll get it done, and you start being like a squirrel watching Mr. Beast and who knows
Yeah,
what.
yeah.
Instead, it's like, turn off all notifications. I'm putting on this timer for 40 minutes and I'm working on this one task. And then when the timer goes off, you stretch and take a break for 10 minutes. You come back, set a timer, and set another singular goal for that work session.
Mm,
I think it's called
interesting. Yeah.
Pomodoro method or something like that.
I definitely understand the meaning, but fantastic. I've never heard tomato timer. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
I want to spend most of the time talking about VeeCon 23, but let's cycle it back to the VeeCon 22 for a second.
Okay.
It's the first time you went, I presume, correct?
Yes, I would never miss it.
Uh, First time, we saw the pump up videos. We didn't know what to expect. Talk to me about your VeeCon 22 experience.
I loved it. And like I said before, I am a conference junkie, or I was pre-baby. And so I've been to a lot of events, a lot of conferences, and I feel like VeeCon is definitely special. It's got such a great mix of education and entertainment, as all great content does, right? So you can learn at sessions, but there's also so many activations and things to do and participate in. And the community is like none other. If you care about the qualities that Gary talks about, you're just going to be a nice, fun, good person, I think. So I can't speak highly enough about it. Uh, now I'm trying to remember. Like I definitely okay. So it was in the stadium. So it was a lot of walking. There was a lot more walking than I expected, but I only wear comfortable shoes and clothes at this point, so it wasn't too bad. No heels for me. I'm already practically 6 feet tall, by the way, which you can't tell on the screen, but I do not wear heels unless I'm salsa dancing. Yeah, it was. I loved it.
Was there a thing, like looking back, and enough time has passed right now? Was there like a surprising moment or something you were like, oh wow, I didn't know I was
Mm.
gonna feel this, or did something click from a business perspective, or did you go in like this is my goal? I mean, conferences like
Yeah,
this is what I'm gonna work on during these few days.
yeah.
But it always almost inevitably is something else that really hits from that first one.
So
'Cause-
for the first one, I missed attending a good chunk of it because I was setting up the Hawk party. So we did the Hawk party on Friday night, so the night of the first day. And the venue that we did was walkable from the stadium, and they allowed us to come a few days early and start setting up. So I got in a few days in it early, and I was there like every day for a few hours before setting things up. So I kind of missed a good chunk of things like um so I might even not even know every single thing that happened, but the Hawk party definitely stood out for me because it was just so amazing to meet everybody in person because that was really the first time that
Sure.
a lot of us had been in the same room together. So I definitely loved that experience. Um, and then the other thing for me that stands out is I did wait in that long ass line to get a picture with Gary. So I did it on like the last day, so I was number like 10 in the line. So I waited forever, but at least I waited forever up front where I could sit down and just chat with people
Mm,
instead of waiting like as it moved and then you're not sure. Oh, that reminds me. That first day it was in that outdoor space.
yeah.
I got in line to wait for Gary, and as more people came in, the line just got worse, and it became like a big mosh pit in like the front. And I was like, I'm never going to meet Gary, so forget about it. So I gave up on that one.
Oh no.
But I
It was.
did.
I remember this. There were. It was very interesting how they set it up. And granted, it was their first time. They had a meet. They had a selfie line with Gary.
Yeah.
Meet Gary. But they also had a wine autograph line, if you remember.
Mm,
So there were two separate lines, and he got to the selfie line first, and then he just like started bouncing back and forth, and at one point it just turned into chaos and meshed into one, and he like got cut off.
I
They've
gave up before that.
obviously, the spoiler alert, they figured it out.
Yeah.
They're on a appointment system,
Yes, that's
but
so smart.
that we paid our dues that first year. Um,
Yeah. But yeah, so I did get a picture with him, and I remember saying, "Caw, caw," as I walked up to him. And then I remember I said, "I love you" in a non-creepy way. That's all I remember.
what did he say back?
I don't know. Yeah, it's a blur. You know, like you go into this other mental state where you're just like,
We've called it the vortex. Yeah, you just
yeah,
get sucked in.
yeah.
VeeCon 22, really amazing, amazing guests, just meeting people for the first time. Like he said it perfectly, like the whole camp thing, like you meet people
Yeah.
for the first time and then you connect the second, and your family by the third. The community stage was introduced in
Mhm.
VeeCon 2023. Hundreds, thousands, I don't know the number, applied to be on this stage and speak and represent the community and speak on their expertise. You, Laura, were one of the chosen ones uh, on a panel with a couple of other legends,
Mm.
Melina, Girl in the Verse, and Steve, who's really had a year uh, this year in 2024. Talk to me about that experience and honor. And Was it
Yeah.
something that you applied to right away? Did you see yourself wanting to do it, or were you coaxed into it? I'd love to hear the story behind you getting up there, because it was an excellent panel.
Oh,
So
thank
first of
you.
all, congratulations for that honor, for the first ever community stage, and yeah, let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you. So I used to be absolutely terrified of public speaking. Like, I could teach high school students math, but the idea of speaking to adults, I literally would want to throw up and just be like shaky, like so scared. And so I realized that I wanted to get over this. I think it was the beginning of 2018. And so a girlfriend of mine who's an amazing entrepreneur, and she was also big in the pageant world, she thought maybe I want to start training entrepreneurs on how to speak and do better with PR and things like that. And so she's like, "Do you want to go through my process with me?" I was like, "Yes." And so we worked together and I started to say yes to little speaking things. And I was like, the only way I'm going to get through this is just to keep on doing it. You just do it enough times and eventually you're like, okay, I got it. It's not too bad. And also for me, I reframed it from I used to be so afraid that if I spoke on a stage, that the other speakers would be like, wow, who the hell are you? You don't deserve to be up here. You suck.
Mm,
And I was so worried about that. It was like ego, self, like, oh my gosh, not worthy, imposter syndrome. And I finally reframed it to I'm here to help someone in the audience, even if it's one person, with something that I know, even if I'm just a couple steps ahead. I don't have to be the ultimate expert in XYZ, but even if I'm just a step ahead and I can explain it in a way that they can get value from it, then it's all worthwhile. And my only goal is just to share something that I might know that can help people. That's it. So when I was able to reframe that and then just keep doing it a couple of times and kind of work out the crazy fear, then I actually started to grow to like it, which I could not believe that that was possible. So this is 2018, 2019. Then I had my son, and then I was just like, in COVID, and then I kind of just stopped doing a lot of stuff for a while. So to come around to answer your question, when I saw that, I did not apply right away. And I haven't really done as much public facing content. I have done a lot for clients on the back end, but not as much publicly. So I was kind of like, would they even want me at this point? Like, I don't have a million followers on TikTok. Like, I'm not doing what Gary says to do, which I know you should do if you want to grow a personal brand. But I'm like, I don't even know if I want a personal brand anymore because I'm so focused on something else. So I was like, well, I'm not going to apply. But then it was like ticking down to the end of the application, and I can't remember which Hangout Hawk it was. So I should look back just to see. But a Hangout Hawk and then also Daniel D in the Hawks like tagged me or said, "Hey, you applied, right?" And I was like, "Oh, two people that I respect said I should apply." And I'm like, "Shit, maybe I should. Who cares? If they say no, they say no." So I applied kind of like right at the end and was very honored to be chosen. Yeah.
amazing. I mean, shoot your shot.
Yeah. You
You're so far you're
don't say
batting a
no for
thousand.
someone else, right? Don't say
Right,
no for somebody
exactly.
else.
All right, so far with all of your stories, you're batting a thousand when you right
No.
hook. Um,
No.
amazing. Really cool honor. Like I said, like a lot of people applied. I can't remember. They threw out like a ballpark estimate. I'm not even gonna try to remember what it was, but it was like surprisingly high, even for this little universe we live in. Super cool. Um, did you did you feel yourself like, I don't know if transform is like a goofy word for that, but like did you feel yourself elevate like with your confidence, your what you thought you were capable of after that experience?
I think I would say honestly, because I had done so much work
To
before.
get to that point, that's right.
Yeah. And also, I am in such a season of life right now. I don't know if it'll always be that way, but with my son being so young and even seeing Gary as a role model where he doesn't show his kids, I did have a lot of pics and cute videos of my son like his first year. But after a while, I just started to pull back on that. And I was like, part of it is out of fear because I'm just like, you hear the crazy stories
Yeah,
about
sure.
people targeting kids and all that crazy stuff. But then I also did kind of think, well, I'm choosing for him. Maybe he doesn't want that once he fully understands what that could entail with, just being out there so much, your life being out there, your face and all this stuff. So I kind of, around 1 year, I just decided to stop posting pictures of him and videos of him and stuff, and just kind of felt myself becoming a bit more private. So I still post some things, but I'm just in a season of life of I don't work full time because I don't want to we don't put our son in like full time daycare or nanny or whatever. He does go to daycare a couple days a week just for a few hours, just so that he's getting some exposure to other kids and he's not just with us all the time. But we've set up our life and our finances and everything so that we don't have to do full time daycare. Like we don't have to, which is
Good for
very
you.
lucky, you know. So
That's
And so my husband or I are with him always. And I want that. I love that. So I only have a few hours a day that I put aside for working or organizing stuff with the Hawks. And I try my best. I'm not perfect, but I try to be present with him when it's my turn to watch him and play with him and do all that kind of stuff. So just in my season of life, I don't want to put in all the time and energy to be out there and posting and creating and doing all that kind of stuff. So same with speaking, like I don't want to be away from him. So the only time that I leave him now is VeeCon. That's the only event that I
mm,
go. I did speak at Sheep Podcasts in Scottsdale a couple years ago, but I brought them all out. So they came along with me, and that was difficult in its own ways because you got like a 2-year-old running around and like you're like,
yeah.
I'm not getting good sleep before I need to speak. And it's like, okay, maybe this just isn't the right thing right now for me anymore. So this is a very long way to answer your question, but hopefully it's helpful to people out there who are parents or maybe thinking about it. But I'm just very comfortable in like I don't need to be everything everywhere to everyone right now because that's not my priority, my focus. And if I am requested or want someone wants me to speak or do something like that, great if it's a good fit, but I'm not actively like pursuing it or hoping or like I don't
Mm.
have any of the ego tied into it as much as
I
I did
I
in the
totally get
past.
it. And it's very admirable, especially like you're very like your conviction and your just like zen like answer, like this is just what I'm doing. Like I have to remind myself all the time, like I have a lot of ambitions and my like squirrel brain is always going, and like we live in this place with like, Twitter's always on, you get the FOMO, and there's always things happening, and
Totally.
it's difficult to put it down. It's difficult to like not want to do the next thing or like go to this thing where you could talk to this person who could,
Hmm.
it's tough to sit back on that from that game, so to speak, and just do the thing. But I like, it seems very natural to you, and it's definitely natural to my wife to do that. And I have to remind myself sometimes, like, yeah, no, this is your priority, um, and which is true. Like, I definitely like in my Twitter thing, it's like striving to be a Hall of Fame dad. Like that's number
Hmm.
one.
Hmm.
And like when I'm in it, like it's fine. But pulling myself out of the like the weeds, so to speak, of the game, like podcast and space, how it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It's tricky sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, it's tricky in this fast-moving ecosystem where there's always something to do.
Oh yeah.
So, good for you, Laura. That's fantastic. I love that answer. Before we kind of get into our last segment here, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Duck Buddies. I
Oh,
think it officially
forgot
launched
about that.
September 23rd. I don't know if that's your only book. I was kind of peeking at your stuff. You mentioned, you're an author. Talk to us about what you've been doing with that, if it's a series or any other books you're working on.
Yeah, so Duck Buddies, The Secret Clubhouse is the first in a multi-part series that's in the works. And so with a fellow Hangout Hawk, his name is Raj, He's a pedactor.eth on Twitter. So he owns some Bored Apes and a bunch of Super Yetis and Sup Ducks. And he saw that I was starting to be saying, hey guys, I'm going to write a children's book. I'm not sure what yet about. And so he reached out and was like, hey, I've got this IP, but I'm not doing anything with it. Would you want to collaborate? And you can use my IP to create derivative characters that are inspired by the original artwork, but childlike, because Bored Ape Yacht Club is not exactly made for children. um, and basically, like, would you be open to having your art be inspired by some of the characters that I don't know? It's like, yeah, let's do it. So I wrote a book where two ducks are the main characters, and then there are three apes that are the supporting characters. And the art is inspired by Sup Ducks and Bored Ape Yacht Club.
I love that.
Yeah. So that was really, really fun. And I hired an illustrator on Fiverr because I am not a good enough artist to do it myself. So I do like very rough, like bad sketches and send it to her as a storyboard. And then she does a rough sketch and I'm like, okay, no, move this over here. And then she adds the color and all that. And she does it all in Photoshop. And then I'm actually decent with Photoshop. So once she sends it to me, I go back in and I add the text where I want it to go and kind of readjust the story slightly depending on what she sent me, because sometimes you have to adjust things. So at the very end of the Duck Buddies book, they're all happy at the end in the treehouse. And Raj loves Super Yetis. And so we stuck a Super Yeti inspired character at the very end. Like a Marvel movies where there's always like a little cliffhanger, like random
Yeah, of
thing at
course.
the end. That was my husband's idea. He's like, why don't you kind of give a hint at what might be coming next? And so there's a little Yeti hidden at the last page of the Duck Buddies
That's
book.
cool.
And so this next book that's almost done, so it'll be definitely live by VeeCon. I was originally going to call it the Horny Yeti and the Purple Spaghetti because it has horns. And I have sort of a silly sense of humor. I kind of like pushing the boundaries of like double meaning words and like,
Sure.
you know, maybe I scare away some people that think that that's absolutely ridiculous. But I had to kind of change directions because the original cover, I wanted to have the main Yeti with horns on there, but I didn't want to give it away which Yeti it was because there's actually 20 Yetis. And the kids, as they read, they get to kind of figure out which Yeti stole the spaghetti. So I didn't want to reveal which Yeti stole the spaghetti on the cover. And then I kind of made it masked and dark. So it was like mysterious. And when my son saw it, he goes, oh, it's scary, mommy. Like, take it away. And I was like, oh, shit.
Done.
So know your audience.
Yeah.
So I had to completely scratch that. So the illustrator just sent me an updated version where you can see all 20 Yetis and they're all looking at the spaghetti like hungrily. So then the title is not going to have horny in it anymore. It's going to be like, which Yeti stole my purple spaghetti or something silly like that. But it's almost done, long story short. And inside of that book, there's a gutter cat and a moonbird that are hidden
Oh wow. You
in
got
there. So then the next book can be about cats and owls or
very
the
cool.
yeah.
You're running the gamut there of all the projects, all the PFPs.
Yeah.
So cool. So cool. Well, we'll definitely be rooting you on and supporting that's awesome. It's gonna be the summer of children's books here.
Yeah.
Couple quick questions before we get into our last segment.
Sure.
Community is a word that gets thrown around all the time. PFP land, people speak highly of our community. What does that word mean to you, community?
I would say like-minded people that have a common goal and common values. Um, for me, that sometimes is hard to find in person personally. Um, we used to live in San Diego, which I love, but we moved more inland because we wanted lower expenses, and it's just absolutely crazy expensive in California. And sometimes I feel like I have a hard time really connecting with other moms. I'm almost 43. A lot of moms with young kids are like in their late 20s. And I'm like a nerd for talking about business and Gary Vee and VeeFriends and all this stuff. And a lot of other moms are not interested in talking about that. So I love that there are things like this, and I'm 0% religious, so I don't have like a church kind of community. And I feel like if you're not involved in a church related thing, sometimes it's harder to find other like-minded people. There aren't as many groups that aren't religiously affiliated. So I love the fact that there's this
Mm.
VeeFriends where it's all coming together on really positive characteristics, but not necessarily religion, although Gary is our leader. I'm just kidding. Um,
Clip it.
yeah. And Gary,
No,
we trust. WWGD. What would Gary do?
I, uh, I, I get it. I get it.
I, yeah, I am not in a cult, I swear, but it's not a cult. Don't run away, people. VeeFriends is good. It's not, yeah.
That's amazing. That's so funny.
So I think that I love how Gary does talk about the internet is so incredible for people to be able to find like-minded people all over the world, even if they're not able to be together in person all the time. So I find it extra valuable that VeeFriends is a great community that cares about entrepreneurship and being a good person and finding happiness in whatever balance of levers that means for you. Money aside, what makes you happy? Let's all support each other in getting that.
Fantastic. Love that answer. Which VeeFriends character do you, Laura, need to spend more time with right now?
My first thought is patient pig, because sometimes it can be hard being patient when you have a little kiddo who's like, why? Do this, play with me, do this. And you're like, I need to feed you as well. Like, please be patient and just let me finish making this food. So I think just in personal life, even more patience is a good virtue to continue to work on.
I totally get it. How old's your son now?
He'll be 5 in September. So
Got it.
yeah, 4, almost
Yeah,
5.
we have a 5-year-old. Um, so
You
totally
get it.
get it,
Yeah.
especially with two younger siblings. It,
Oh.
it amplifies it.
Hmm.
Amazing. Before we get in our last segment, I just want to
Yeah.
again thank you, Laura, for all the good juju you're putting out in the world, for being here, just for being an amazing ambassador to the Hawks, to everybody, to moms, all of the above. And I'm definitely going to probably selfishly uh, tap into your expertise for writing
Good.
at some point, because I have a book endeavor that's I'm starting to get some traction on.
Cool. Well, thanks
So
for all you do for our community and bringing this together. I literally had the idea I should do a podcast and interview everyone in the Hawks and then in VeeFriends. And then I was like, yeah, I don't have the energy for that. So I'm so glad that you are taking the torch and doing it.
it yeah, it's so cool, and I say this all the time, but one of my favorite things is just kind of blocking off time in our busy lives just to kind of connect one on one with a fellow V friend, with
Yeah.
especially one that I haven't talked to before.
Yeah.
So this is super awesome. Really appreciate you. So the last segment, real quick, is called Micro Macro Spitfire. I'm gonna throw a lot of quick questions at you. You could answer in as general as you like, yes, no, in the macro, or elaborate and get your microscope out.
Okay.
So here we go.
Okay.
Favorite teacher you had growing up, and one reason why.
Mrs. Lang, I can't even describe why, but she was so interesting, and I don't even know why. One thing that I remember is she would read and she would take the book and she would go like this to the class so we could all see the pictures. And for anyone who's only listening, she would just kind of take the book and like bounce it across the whole class. And it just stuck with me. It just seemed like such a funny, silly, random thing to do. I don't know. I can't, I'm doing a very bad job answering this, but she just always stuck out for me as being a really interesting, fascinating teacher. She taught social studies and just brought it
She
to
had the X
life.
factor. She had
Yeah.
Some teachers just have the X factor. I
She's
get it.
yeah, brought it to life in a unique way.
What brand, influencer, company, whatever, fill in the blank, if they came out and created an NFT tomorrow, would you have to drop everything and just jump right in?
Only thing I can think of is Gary. I barely bought anything before VeeFriends, and now I freaking have everything. Like, I've even got a vending machine
I
behind me.
see your
Like,
vending machine.
my plan is to put it in a local business and try to teach my son about business, but I haven't figured out which business yet. So now it's just in the office as decoration. It's like, Gary, just take my money. Like, I should just set up the bank account to be a direct deposit because now I
Direct.
have all of his shit in here.
Amazing. All right,
No
so
one else. I'll do
Gary
that for no one else.
Gary V. What was your favorite IP as a kid?
My Little Pony. I remember I had a really older cousin and he used to babysit us. And he would take us to the old video stores where you actually picked videos out. And I remember him being like, Laura, please, let's pick something else, pick something new. And I was like, no, we are watching the My Little Pony movie again. And so yeah, I really liked that.
Secret talent you have that most people don't know.
Would salsa dancing be secret? Did you know that before?
You said something earlier in the convo, but
Right.
other than that, no.
Okay.
We'll take it. Salsa dancing.
Hmm.
If we walked into teenage Laura's bedroom, what poster are we seeing on the wall?
Oh God. Titanic poster.
Nice.
My best friend Emily and I saw Titanic in the theater 4 times when we were in
Titanic.
high school.
It was an epic movie. 1997.
Classic.
Bougie hotel or hiking and camping in the woods?
Bougie hotel.
VeeCon 2025, or sorry, VeeCon 2024 is going to be in LA. Do you think there's going to be a VeeCon 2025? And if so, where is it going to be?
Hmm. Okay, I'll say yes, Toronto or St. Louis.
Favorite concert you've ever been to?
Ugh. Okay, that's funny. I don't like concerts. I don't like big crowds, and that's also part of the reason I left that like grassy knoll thing at VeeCon 1. I was just like, no, I feel exposed. I don't like a bunch of people everywhere. But the best concert I have ever been to is Juanes. He is a singer from Colombia, and I saw a concert of his in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was actually what I loved about it, in addition to I adore his music, is it was actually in one of those theaters where the seats are progressively higher, like a real theater. So even
Mm-hmm.
if people stood up, you could still sit your butt down and watch. I cannot stand that you pay for a ticket at a concert and people stand up the whole time and block you. It makes no sense to me. I'd rather just listen to the CD at home. CD.
I love it. That's a great take. Which VeeFriend needs to be voted into the White House right now, this year, 2024 election year?
I mean, first thing that comes to mind is Hangout Hawk. Of course. We're all about business and community.
Let's go. Hang out for 4 years. What is your favorite piece of physical VeeFriends memorabilia?
I guess this vending machine thing is pretty cool.
Wine, beer, or coffee?
Coffee. I don't like the other two.
Gratitude Gorilla, or Patient Panda?
I think Gratitude Gorilla because I've got a little stuffed animal of it and it's just so cute the way they made it.
Would you rather have a 2-hour group dinner experience with Gary, so let's say you and 9 other people, or a 10-minute one-on-one?
Okay, definitely heard you ask this to people. I need more information. Who are the other people? Do I get to pick?
Let's say it's just a bunch of hawks. 9 lucky hawks.
Sorry, okay, give me the whole question again because I was so
So
distracted
would
by
you
that.
rather have a group dinner experience, let's say it's you and 9 other hawks
Hmm.
and Gary for 2 hours,
Hmm.
or a 10-minute one-on-one, just you and Gary?
Okay, then I would do the dinner because it's so much longer.
And if you could ask Gary one question, you've had ample opportunities to ask him a question, but if he was right here and you could ask him one question, what would it be?
I think it would be, what is your honest advice on what I could, can, should do to bring the Hawks together even more?
I love it. Guys, VeeFam, Laura Petersen, Laptop Laura, thank you so much for being here. Love all of your energy. Can we get one caw for everybody?
I was gonna close it with a caw, like even if you didn't ask. America.
All right. Shout out to Hangout Hawk. Shout out to VeeFam. Love you guys. Laura, thanks so much for being here. This was fantastic.
My pleasure. See you next time. See you on X or Twitter or whatever.
We'll
Discord.
see you at VeeCon.
VeeCon.